The Lost Dreamer by Lizz Huerta, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, I don't know how to pronounce it, is a fantasy novel inspired by and designed to be, or resemble at least, ancient Mesoamerica, which some very traditionally native ideas, technologies, and architecture all featured throughout the story. As you can see, like the artwork is also very ancient. It follows two storylines about a magical dreamer named Indir and unprofessional but also really overpowered dreamer named Jasea. And their stories end up connecting and telling one big story, even though it ends with a cliffhanger. Okay, let's begin with a brief summary or a synopsis of The Lost Dreamer. So this novel begins with two protagonists that both tell their stories in first person. As I mentioned their names earlier, and you gotta keep track of this because it is kind of difficult sometimes, Indir and Seiya. So Indir is a trained dreamer, one that's been following tradition and doing all of the rituals, who lives in a really sacred city called Alkenze. I don't know if I pronounced that right, which is this massive center of political events and a bunch of social stuff too. They have three pretty important factions that live there. The first are the Dreamers, which are these a bunch of women who are capable of entering a dream world and sometimes seeing possibilities of the future. It's pretty cool. The second are called Avex, who are a bunch of soldiers. And then there are Fire Warriors, who were actually banned from Alkenza a long time ago, but now they're let back for peace agreements. The leader of the Fire Warriors is a guy named Alkin, who's this complete jerk in so many ways. He's just mean to everybody. He's just disrespectful to everything. He destroyed a statue of his own dad because his dad was the previous king. And technically, he's not the king yet because no one has saw him in dreaming becoming the king, which is kind of a tradition in their place, but Alkin just does whatever he wants anyway. Now, if we go back to India, our protagonist, we just see her experience chaos in many forms as Alkin starts making dramatic changes to Alkin's that none of them are great. And Inyur even lost her ability to dream after dreaming for Alkin's dad right before he died. Indir can no longer dream. And the worst part is Indir used to be able to dream truth, as in whatever she dreamed would definitely happen. Now she has lost that ability, a bunch of chaos crap is happening, and she just adapts to a bunch of the fast changes happening in Alkin's. And Alkin is just sabotaging the dreamers every time he can. So the second part is a person named Seiya. Seiya is an undreamed dreamer, does not know all of the ritual, does not know all of the cool training stuff. It's just a dreamer who can enter the dream. And Seiya, unlike India, can directly speak with spirits, which are these, like, how do I say this, species that lives in the dream. Now, usually trained dreamers can't do that because spirits can very potentially be dangerous, but since Seiya was never trained and did not know how to train, Seiya can do whatever she wants. Seiya lives with her mother, Sele, who keeps them moving again and again as if they're running away from something, an invisible threat. And Sele always uses Seiya to predict small bits of future using, because Seiya can use the dream. And then Sele pretends to be able to see the dream by telling people about these awesome truths to earn money and to earn food and stuff. Sele also uses Seiya to get a better public image because, being a dreamer is pretty cool. Sele unfortunately does punish Seiya whenever Seiya doesn't do anything correctly or doesn't see a few details in the dream that could potentially expose Sele for the fraud she is, and forces Seiya to wear this necklace that she says is a protection. Now, Seiya's pretty convinced that this necklace is capable of protecting her, but eventually Seiya starts to distrust Sele because Seiya notices how her mom, Sele, keeps lying to everybody and basically is using her as a little, magical dreamer. And Seiya's just wondering if this trust is cool at all. And then when someone randomly snatches the necklace away from Seiya, Sele's protection is gone, and suddenly Seiya realizes she can see much more than she previously thought. We just see both India's story progressing, Seiya's story progressing. We don't know when they progress exactly, and in the end, they tie together in an awesome fashion. Okay, now onto the review. So for The Lost Dreamer, let's start with emotional variation as normal, and character development as well. For emotional variation, I would say that The Lost Dreamer is pretty decent. Like, most of the characters, you can see their feelings pretty obviously. It's almost entirely negative for India, who has like a few small happy moments, but it just repeatedly gets battered by one after another terrible changes happening to Alkansa and all the crap stuff happening. It's really bad for India. India repeatedly gets to see her loved ones get attacked and other loved people also get attacked, and watches as her entire dreamer lineage is getting completely ruined by Alkin, who just wants to sabotage them. For Seiya, it's more positive because at first Seiya's only experiencing kind of a being directly controlled by Sele, but after she starts to abandon Sele and Sele's way of thinking, she gets more freedom and generally is more positive overall. Only the protagonists have character development. The rest of the characters don't change at all, but that's pretty normal, so I wouldn't say that's a really bad part. Now, the next part of this review, which is ideas, topics, and themes, is where the Lost Dreamer really shines. There are two central topics and themes of the book, and they revolve around each other flawlessly. The first one is chaos/change, and the second is peace/imprisonment. We see two really wildly different characters, India and Seiya, and they change in different ways too. India fears change. She fears what a lot of Alkan has been doing to Alkanza, like literally destroying it and defiling a bunch of crap, which is not good at all, and usually causes India to feel worse and worse and worse over time. She fears the change. She fears the chaos. India is more used to the peace of her old life, living in the temple, practicing her traditions, living with her family. It's all been great, but then change happens and she is not prepared for it. Then we see the opposite side of the same coin. Seiya, who's been used to peace this entire time, but it's actually a type of imprisonment. Sele doesn't let her make her own decisions. Sele controls her every decision, her every movement, and repeatedly lies to her to prevent her from changing at all. While Seiya is also scared of chaos, she embraces it fully and tries to change herself in new ways because she wants to free herself from her own traditional ways of thinking, which she knows are wrong. So this kind of polar opposite, the fear of chaos and change, the love of chaos and change, the love of peace and the fear of imprisonment really shows the double topic, double theme of The Lost Dreamer. It's really cool to integrate into a lot of sections, and when their stories overlap, you can see how their different mindsets have evolved over time. Now on to the flaws and written quality of The Lost Dreamer. They're the same thing. I will give the author credit for trying to do this ancient Mesoamerican style, all that, the special language they use, the different types of, the different way they speak compared to regular present-day people, so that's perfectly fine. However, they repeat two phrases and one point again and again and again in every chapter, at least 5 times. The first one is whenever anything happens to India, and I mean anything happens to India, someone around her aunt, her boyfriend, her anything, will say, chaos comes, and then everyone starts singing. It's like the book is a musical, but without the music. It's incredibly stupid. They just repeat it for every time. Oh, India lost a shoe, chaos comes. India jumped off a small rock, chaos comes. India's literally enjoying her time, chaos comes. It's so annoying. Every time Seiya does anything, everyone says story or whatever, something like, oh, that's just your story. Oh, this story is changing. Oh, stories don't end, they only change. Oh, your story has this, your story has that. Is this Sally's story? Is this your story? And then they start talking about each other's stories. And it makes no sense at all. It's like they're trying to force a theme throughout the book that makes no sense and does not apply to anything else. Again, repeated story, the word story, and then story this, story that. There's no variety at all. Also, I will say that maybe Mesoamerican culture is different about this, so I wouldn't know, but the amount of physical description in this book is really unsettling. When they talk about the sweat of each other's body, you can just see sweat everywhere. It just makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. This might be intended. I'm not going to say this is a big flaw, but the repeated words of chaos comes and your story changes is so annoying that I just don't want to read it anymore. So overall, I would say The Lost Dreamer is a pretty good book, especially compared to a bunch of terrible fantasy novels I've read. It has excellent world building, excellent themes. The whole ancient topic is just amazing. Mesoamerican stuff is just really cool overall, and it's really only held back by a few reoccurring phrases.